Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your tech and production related questions every day. And let's just start. What do we have, Alexander?
First one's from Paul Wall, who's in Austin, Texas. How would you incorporate these NAT lights into show setup, placement, intensity, Kelvin, supplemental lights?
Courtney.
Well, they look like very nice lights for the price. They're very full-featured. This is what they look like. They say they have both direct LEDs for a little harsher light, hard light, although they're spread out over a fairly large panel, or basically SMS or not cob lights, but smaller LEDs, maybe at the base of those others to give you a more diffused light. They're also compatible with DMX. They have DMX in, out, and through. My only worry about them is these two fan ports on the back here is, as Alex was talking earlier, fan noise can be cumulative, and if you have a bunch of these on your set and they're fairly close to an open microphone, that could be a little bit problematic, especially with all those LED on that panel. That could create a good amount of noise. But it has a lot of special effects where it has RGB effects, so you don't need to use any filters or gels to color the lights. And they have, and it's, of course, dual color temperature. They have two sets of daylight balanced and tungsten balanced LEDs in there, which you can crossfade across the two of them so that you can adjust the color temperature of the light and two whites. So it looks fairly comprehensive and probably has an app that goes with it, but I didn't get a chance to see if it does that. But it's about $500 for a light, or $600 for a light, close to that. So it'd be kind of expensive, but other than that, I think it looks like a fairly good offering.
Guy.
Yeah, I have the bigger brother to this one, the 150, and it packs a punch, but really what this one was supposed to do was something that nobody else is doing. It's got this button that lets you switch the array from the hard lights to the soft lights. So, I can't talk and push the button up there. It's way up high, but basically there's a button up there that says, actually, I could go push it. Hold on.
It's worth the wait, folks. It's worth the wait. There we go.
Oh, you see it?
Yeah.
So this is the hard light. And then that's the soft light. And then HSI mode. So it's an RGB light that you can switch through these different modes. But when you switch to that soft light mode, it does create a soft light. But this is a big light. And so when you enable that, it cuts the output at about half. So it's kind of rough to lose that much output. So I find that I don't take these. In fact, my local rental house bought a bunch and they sold them. One, because of the point that Courtney brought up about the app. There is no app, so it is DMX control. So the one that they are renting out a lot of, and once you get these things in the sky, so to answer the question, if you're building something out where you have lights that are up in a grid, you want to be able to control those from the ground, and DMX would be the way to do that. But knowing Paul's smaller studio, you might not want to get something that you can't control. And I don't know if the 150 is going to be enough if you want to soften that light and put some kind of diffuser. It kind of defeats the purpose of paying so much money for this feature that's not really that great. Otherwise, the market would have adopted these things. They'd be in every rental house, but I'm just not. I'm seeing these. So I have the P600 down here from Aperture, and I'm seeing way more of these go out and be out in the market. If you want something small and compact, that's the brother to that P60. This is the Amaran P60, and then this one will give you the same color output. But these things pack down. You could fit 3 of these in a case this size. This is 3 of those P60s in one case. So, I mean, it's crazy. That light up there, the P150 or the 150 mix panel, is humongous. It's bigger than this case for one light. I'd rather have 3 that I could position and put wherever I want. So it depends on how much you want to spend and really what you're doing. If you're taking it on the road, how you're going to power them. And then again, soft versus hard light, because you're paying a premium for that. If you don't need those RGB colors, I'd probably just go with a straight bicolor light that's just the ability to go from 5600 to 3200 with the click of a button instead of paying for RGB values that you're not really going to utilize.
Alex.
Yeah, I think that I have them. That's what's actually lighting my background is our two of the MX60s, and they're great. They're great lights. They're probably more than you need for what you're doing. So they're at $600 each. I think that you have to think about what the value is and what you're adding them to. I think they're working great for me. I had them; they were available for me to use. So long before office hours, Nanlite actually sent me some to test, and so I have them here. And I've then since bought hundreds of Nanlites because they've worked out really well for us. If you're putting them in front of you, I agree with Guy. There's a lot of other solutions that you can, and with Courtney, there's a lot of other solutions that you can use that are going to be effective in front of you. What's important in front of you, in my opinion, is big soft lights, and you can do that with. I'm using two of the older 68s that are. I don't even know if these are by color. I think these are just 50. They don't make them anymore. These are 56K 68s that Nanlite made, but they're behind a larger softbox that I built, with maker pipe and some diffusion I bought on Amazon. And so the thing is that I think that you building a big softbox is really important for you. I don't think, and the lights behind it are much less important at that point. Again, if you're moving them around and they need to be portable, what Guy showed you is really important. If you are in a space, basically every time we work with models or people who have to look really good, we're putting big frames in there, 4x4 frames. We're putting, big diffusion, processes in, and that's all we're doing here. It's just diffuse the heck out of it. And really you can put in all kinds of egg crates and everything else, but a lot of the shoots we use don't use those at all. Like we just literally just push a lot of light at the person, especially if it's at a 45-degree angle and you have a wide open set behind you. It just depends on how deep that set is. The lighting from this light, for instance, in front of me doesn't hit the background much at all. And then there's lots of things you can do to add add color to it. So I think that for the price of two of those lights, which is what you'd probably get, you could get a lot of lights for what you're doing. And so you just really got to decide what it is. There's definitely use cases, and I've used these lights in many, many different environments, and they've been super effective. I do recommend if you're building something, the next version of what I'm building here will be all DMX. And I'm going to probably use Luminaire to control them all. So I can control color and light and intensity and everything else with an iPad app. And I'm not rather than trying to figure out how to use each app that everybody makes for their lights, I just rather just do DMX. so that will be one of my minimum requirements is DMX for the next one. But I don't know if these are pretty heavy duty for a simple set.
Courtney.
Yeah, if you don't need the versatility, if you're just going to put them up and use them in one of their many modes in a studio and they're never going to change, don't spend the money on them. You won't necessarily need to DMX control them or to change the color temperature or to go from hard light to soft light. You're going to choose one of those and go with it. Choose an appropriate light. The other thing for you, if you're going to use them in the field that I didn't mention is they're DC powered and they come with this 15 volt, which is a little bit unusual for a 4-pin connection, a DC connection, 15 volts, 6 amps. So if you're going to be using, you're going to have that power supply hanging off of them wherever you go because it's an external power supply. So that's a consideration to have to deal with. If you're going to be mounting them up high, you're going to have to deal with those big power transformers plugged into them because they are 15 volts, and I don't think there are any connections for batteries, onboard batteries, such as the N-type that are on a lot of these LED lamps that can make them portable and battery powered at least for a few hours in the field. Can you battery power?
I think there are battery powered. I think they're battery. I'll look back and I think that there's a battery mount on them, but I haven't used it.
There is a battery mount. Actually, let me jump back to that shot. So you can see right now I have the adapter on there, but in that spot right there is the plate for a V mount. I can't reach it. Well, I can, but I don't want to get out of my chair again. But yeah, there is a V mount.
So right there in the middle.
And I will say, again, they're great lights. They're just a little overkill for, I think, what Paul's planning for them, I think.
Next question.
Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Does anyone know when the beta of vMix 28 is coming out? I've been excited to try it since watching the demo at IBS last month.
Alex.
We don't. we don't know when vMix when the beta is coming out. So I guess we'll all be surprised when it shows up. I don't know do we know what they were showing, what the new features were for their beta? Probably not. It's probably not. Yeah, we don't know. But when you see the beta, then you can maybe see when we have a vMix person on and ask if they have any opinions about it. All right.
Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia. I'm hoping that vMix on EC2 can serve as a front end to AWS Media Live. This way I can monitor and control my sources more effectively and feel more confident in my encoding pipeline. Do you think they will work together?
Guy.
Sure. Yeah. You just figure out which pipeline you want to get to send it over. But yeah, as long as you're in those two instances are in the same. Actually, they don't even need to be in the same data center because you could send it's the internet. I mean, you can have a private VPC where you handle everything inside of there and just kick out the final encode through that media pipeline, or you can, I mean, basically you're using vMix as a multi-viewer or a way to insert maybe some kind of playback or commercial. But yeah, it's a smart move to monitor those in some way. But yeah, AWS allows you to push either in or out through those Media Live encoders. So it just depends on which route you want to go and if you want to use SRT or NDI. So yeah, it's easy. That's what it's built for. And there are some great classes that are free if you want to learn more about this stuff. I'll put a link in the chat to some stuff that I just got through that was pretty geeky stuff. So you can go in there on their skill builder course library and you can go through these and you can get some certifications that may or may not matter in your world. But I went through while I was on the plane last week. Went through about 5 of those modules while wearing my goggles online. It was kind of fun to geek out and watch AWS modules while flying.
Alex.
Yeah, another one you may want to think about if you're just doing monitoring and you're not like trying to do a production in the cloud is VVCR. So VVCR is really designed to do exactly what you're talking about, which is get a bunch of stuff that's coming in, reroute them, have confidence, be able to send them out to a lot of different places. LiveX built this. Corey Benke was on in a previous show, so you might be able to look back at that show that we had with him. I think you may find that to be useful.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, what have your experiences been with events that connected to the ISS?
Alex.
So I'm assuming he means the International Space Station. We've done a couple of those. So the interesting thing is that so what happens is the ISS is always connecting to Houston. Well, for us, so there's windows of where it can connect. It can connect to Europe at different times. It can connect to the United States at different times. And so you'll get these windows. Those windows are pretty hard. When they say, oh, we can do it at this time, this is the time they can do it. And usually oftentimes you're using, not always, but personal time from the astronauts. They have a small amount of personal time that's not scheduled. And especially if you're scheduling one of them, it might be that. Sometimes NASA's giving you NASA time too, but they're pretty stingy. They keep the astronauts pretty busy, up there. So getting the schedule is complicated, and usually it's a pretty tight window. So you'll get 20 minutes or something like that. And you got to make it good. 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, and they're going to come in really quickly and leave really quickly. There's not a lot of room for error. So we always, really underline with partners that we have that they need to be really ready to go. Like this is not you can't, and so what we recommend against is doing hard starts before it. So if you have like an 11 a.m. to 11:20 window, you want to do a show that starts at 10:45 or something like that, so that you're able to jump whenever you're ready to go. And I would recommend that for most live streams. I would recommend. We just had a live stream that I worked on that was a little bit of a challenge because we did a hard start. Like it's just like we're going to start right now. Really giving yourself 15 or 20 minutes of a pre-show really makes everything better. So it rings out a lot of things that may not matter later, and it's just worth doing. So the NASA's very specific about how they do it. So if you do more than one of them, you realize they're reading from a script. Like there's a very specific way they're going to do it. They're going to say hi. The way that they say hi is you'll hear this Houston, or a space station. This is Houston. Do you read us? And then they'll say it very slowly, but the astronauts will typically go, Houston, this is the space station. We read you loud and clear. Like they think it's kind of funny. And then they'll ask you if you can read them. So they'll, back when we did it with Pixel Core, like Pixel Core, this is Houston. Can you read us? And so there's this kind of handshake that they do to make sure that we both can read Houston. And then they'll tell you can commence with the event. And if you look at, So that's that's how you get connected to them. It's a satellite downlink. It's a satellite connection to the ISS to Houston. Houston typically, for most people, will then either for many of these has plumbed it, back up into another satellite and back down again. That creates a double bounce and it adds to the delay. But it's possible to get a route from NASA to DC. And then once you're in DC, they're on this network called the AVOC network, which is an old Verizon thing. So the only place I know that comes out is at 2000M in DC. There's a building there. It's probably the most connected building in the world. And so that it happens to be on an AVOC network and every other network that exists. So that's where you would get that connection there. And then you can pipe it to anything, to be part of the conversation. And so that's been our experience. It's really fun. I mean, it's not as hard as it sounds. It's a lot of logistics. You have a lot of meetings, to make sure that things are ready to go. Oftentimes NASA will want to put it on NASA TV as well. So that's if you have a VIP, usually you have a VIP if you're talking to the space station. So they'll oftentimes want to, put it on their show as well, which is kind of cool. And as a geek who grew up watching every launch that existed, it's probably one of the highlights of my career is getting to do space station connections. So anyway, it's a really cool setup. The folks at NASA are, as you would expect, incredibly professional and really great to work with when you can get it scheduled. It's a challenge. You really have to have some juice to get it set up. But once you get it set up, it's a really great experience. And but you do have to really. What I would recommend is when they start rehearsing with you, start just writing down everything they're saying, because they're going to say it the same way. We have a script. Like we have the printed script of what they say and what we're supposed to say and what they're going to say and what we're going to say the same way that they do, so that we can make sure that we're following the cadence that they expect. And then the other thing is just listen to comms, because it's the calmest comms you'll ever hear. And I think I've said it before on shows, but I asked them one time, I was like, "You're so calm," and they said, "We found that we made the decision that raising your voice does not improve the survivability of the event." So it was like, I realized, oh right, they're dealing with survivors, not with like, oh, we're gonna have to have meetings about those black frames. It's a different set of problems. And so anyway, incredible organization to work with. The events have been, we've done bi-directional events where they're coming into a location, they're coming into classrooms, they're coming in, that type of thing, and they've all been pretty amazing. Anyway, there you go.
Next question.
From Andre Delay in Berlin, what is a good paywall controllable alternative to Vimeo? Preferably even cheaper than Vimeo, asking for a German customer.
David.
Hey, Andre. I have sort of a roundabout way of addressing your question. And it's based on some feedback that I got from this group when I asked a somewhat similar question a couple months ago. So what I needed was not to host videos, but a place to host a live stream that was not just publicly available on YouTube. And the feedback that I got from this group was, why don't you just host it on your own private website? Just embed it. Grab the embed code from YouTube. You can grab the live stream embed code from YouTube. You can grab the live stream chat embed code. Just throw them up on your private website and then either put that behind a password or behind a paywall or behind a membership, or just leave it open, which is what we did, but it's not publicly searchable on YouTube because the video on YouTube is technically unlisted. And that worked brilliantly for us. We had to, all the past Jewish holidays that we had, that's what we did. And it's easy to update the code. There's one little string that you have to grab from each video to update that embed code, but it's easy peasy. And you could absolutely do something similar to host videos. As far as hosting multiple videos and keeping your library, that probably is not the most efficient way to do it. But for a live stream, if that's what you're looking for, I was really grateful that this group gave me that advice.
Alex.
Yeah, and the one thing to note about that is that people can always click through an unlisted event and see it on YouTube, and they can share that direct link as well. So if you're doing it ad hoc, if you're doing these here and there, it oftentimes works well because it's security through obscurity. So a lot of people aren't going to see it. The challenge that you get into is somebody clicks through it, they get to the other side, they share it somewhere else, bad people show up, and all kinds of things happen with your chat. It's one of the reasons if we do an unlisted event, we have our own chat, as you know, because we have Malkana, but we don't use the YouTube chat because we don't want that leak through to happen. We don't want suddenly to have a bunch of horrible things show up in the chat on our page, so we don't embed the chat into the page. So that's one thing to kind of think about in that unlisted area. What you can do is, again, it depends on how many people as well. So if you're going to host this for thousands of people, you need one set of CDNs. If you're hosting it for 100 or 200 people, you can use things like CloudFront. Are going to let you build those out. What we use primarily when a client wants to do this is not Vimeo, and this is not necessarily less expensive, but is Akamai. We're using Akamai and Akamai's Player to do that. But if it's at hundreds, you can literally spin up at hundreds of people. You can spin up your own CDN with a little bit of work, and you don't have to pay anything for it because it's just not that large of a draw. You can build that out, or use something in AWS to make that happen. And again, as David said, just post it on that page, make it work. The advantage of Vimeo is that it does all that work for you. You're trading money for time. So it'll do all of those things there. There's not a lot of turnkey that is as smooth as Vimeo. I will say that as your viewership scales, Vimeo is, not the most stable solution the most stable solution really is Akamai and YouTube. Akamai privately, YouTube publicly, those are the two gold standards. And people will argue about that, but as someone who's done all of them to all of them, those are the two that just work. Everything else is hit and miss. I think CloudFront would be coming in second behind behind Akamai for stability there. But those are the things to think about as you start to put those together.
Guy.
Yeah, in addition to what everybody else has said, Zoom Events was also built for this. If you don't need that super high quality color fidelity, then Zoom Events. We've also used Obvio. Muddy, who was on the Extra Hour show the other day, is a champ, as well as Chuck Wojak and Grant, of course. That's his baby. Basically, the links, when you get one of these emailed links to you and you click on it, it sends you to a page that if somebody else is not logged into that account, it'll just only allow the one person to come in, and the other person will just get down a rabbit hole security-wise. They cannot get into that event. So this is what Tony Robbins events are using, and this way if that link is shared, it sends the second person to nowhere. So it's a really cool security feature, and that's what I would recommend is Obvio. It's obv.io.
Next question.
This one's for me. Can a sound device's mix pre be controlled by BitFocus Companion with the Stream Deck?
Courtney.
I'm not sure because I don't have the latest version of a Mix Pre, but it uses its own interfaces it has a keyboard interface over USB to control it, and it has, of course, its Bluetooth app that you can use to control it. There's a limited amount of stuff you can control. You can see your levels, and you can start, stop, and set metadata and things like that and change the setup. But I don't think you can control level remotely on the Mix Pre's unless you're using their control surface interface, which I think works over MIDI. I'm not sure. Maybe Alex knows a little more. He's got a lot more Mix Pre's than I do. And whether BitFocus has come up with a routine to send those keyboard controls over the keyboard or the USB, I'm not sure.
Alex.
No. No, you can't control it. The only remote control you have is Wingman. Wingman is the Bluetooth app, and it'll run on your M1 series or iPad or iPhone. But Wingman is the only one that's gonna do that.
CJ.
The other thing that you can do if you don't want to reach down and grab those little knobs on the Mix Pre is that you can get the Korg Nano Control or the Korg Studio Control, and that just hooks up over USB. And then what that allows you to do is it just uses MIDI protocol, and you can make these be little gain pots, make these be your levels. And I use it every day, and it's nice because I can't get where I have my Mix Pre. I can't get in there and get at it. So you have the limitations of USB, but that might help you in your situation.
Alexander.
Yeah, and I know, Alex, you've used some of I know you own and you've used the higher end stuff. Is remote control any different on the Scorpio or the 888 or whatever the higher end stuff is?
Yeah, I've only gotten to play with it a little bit. I don't own the mixing interface for the Scorpio, which is another $8,000 or something like that. But it is an amazing piece of machinery that has TalkBack built into it and a variety of other sliders. And as Mickey points out, the 8 series also supports the standard Mackie control protocol. So there's a lot of things that can control it as opposed to that. But the Sound Devices one is great. I had one of the interfaces for the 788, the control interfaces, but I did not haven't punched the ticket for getting the one. I don't use it enough to need the one that Sound Devices makes currently for the Scorpio. But it is it's pretty great controller. And I guess, as someone brought up, I think that you could control it via MIDI. So there might be some way for you to hack into. If you can control it with that Korg, there's probably some way for you to communicate with it to control it with. But I think the technical term for that would be, as was stated by Mickey, would be janky. I think that's the actual technical. The technical term is janky. To try to do that, I would probably stick with the knobs.
Next question.
This one's a QR code from Travis Morrison in Perth, Western Australia. I've had a solo-operated video production business for a few years now. However, I've since shifted direction and rebranded to specializing in live streaming. What are your thoughts on niching? Alex's company seems to do everything.
Go ahead, Alex.
The reason we do a lot of live streaming, and mostly it's live streaming. The reason that we kind of do a lot of different things is that it oftentimes improves the quality of the live streams is that we understand how to do something else or we know how to build something else. Also, it's a great way to get introduced. So, for instance, a good example is, we started doing records for one company. We just recording their shows. And in fact, we started doing green screen for them. So we were doing green screen only. And then we had cameras and they had cameras and why don't we record some of their shows? And next thing you know, we were doing live streams. Next thing you knew that we were doing lots of live streams. Next thing you knew, we were doing their full conference and streaming all the rooms from all the conferences. And, the budget for the first thing was $18,000. It was green screen, shooting, not even removal, and the budget for the last conference we did for them was $1.4 million for one show. So, and probably a budget of, we probably did $2 or $3 million a year for them. So when you look at a lot of those endpoints, the ingress of work, being able to do lots of little things does make a difference because you get to know people based on those things. Obviously, it can be a distraction as well, but a lot of our hardware and skill sets are very similar, so being able to do interviews, for instance, kind of introduces you to a lot of people that might want to do live streaming. And for instance, that company that hired us to do live streaming, it was 2 years of us telling them, hey, you should live stream these. You should live stream these. We could live stream them for you. Like it was, we weren't annoying about it, but we did bring it up relatively often, maybe once a month. So that they could do it. And after 2 years, they were like, well, let's give it a shot. And then after that, they started, turning on the pipe, and then they built studios and we designed them for them and that type of thing. And so I think that you want to look at being able to do a couple different things. But I think that obviously my niche has always been live. I don't really like post, so I have to admit, even though I started in post, I like to be able to finish a project and then walk away and never think about it again, and move on to the next project. It's really I found my my happy place, which was never to think about a project when I was done with it. So I think that I prefer it. And again, 90% of our work is some version of a live stream, but where we're streaming to, and whether it's other venues or the web or specific headsets, it all depends on what what that opportunity is. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity in live streaming. I think you just have to figure out in Perth what people need, or in all of Australia what people need. There's a lot of great people here as well that are doing live streams, and so I would highly recommend also jumping into some of the volunteer opportunities here to get to meet other people and see how we do it, but also it's partially to learn how we're doing what we're doing, which may or may not be standard. But it's also a great way to meet a lot of people and have them know that you do that, because being on other people's teams is really valuable. Like when you're on your own, the best thing you can do is be on other teams. Like what I learned more than anything else over 10 years of doing live streaming for big companies wasn't what we knew how to do. We evolved it, but we were working with every big event company, every broadcaster, and we would suck up new skill sets from each one of them of, oh, I really like what they did there. Like, because they live in two different worlds. Event companies don't know what an EVS is. They've never heard of that before. And so, but we learned that from broadcast. So we really like those. And then the broadcaster guys don't know what Playback Pro is, which is a much easier, was, I don't know if they're still around, but was a much easier way to do playback for those kinds of things as an example. And so those are, I think that getting to work with lots of other people is really, really helpful if you're on your own.
Courtney.
Well, niching has advantages and it has big disadvantages. One of the advantages is if you decide to specialize in one specific type of production, you can become very good at it and be known within your industry as a specialist in that, and you'd be the go-to guy because that's what you specialize in. The problem with niching, and I've run into this several times and had to, change my my entire, method of work a couple of times, change professions. A technological advance can obsolete you. For example, I was doing 24-frame playback, specializing in creating interactive graphics for use in shooting commercials. That's a very niche product. There were very few people that did it. I was one of maybe 5 people in Hollywood that did that. And so, you get a lot of work. You're turning down a lot of work. And then they came out with the ability to track and paste in screens in post very cheaply in every editorial package that was out there. And so suddenly, almost overnight, within a year, all of that work disappeared. It came from, a specialized graphics person that's creating and doing that on the set, synchronizing it to the camera shutter, doing 24-frame playback. Didn't become necessary because you could leave it up to the ad agencies, graphics people to create all the graphics, and they could do it in post-production right up to about, a day before the commercials aired that we were shooting or TV shows aired. So you didn't need to prep everything in advance and shoot it on the set. So my job just kind of disappeared within about a year from being the top guy, one of the top guys in the industry and turning down 3 or 4 jobs a week to no work at all. So you got to be careful with niching because technological advances, especially with AI these days, being able to replace certain tools like, translation and transcription overnight, you could find yourself at the top of a business that no longer exists.
Alex.
Yeah, and I would also say that if you're, depending on how busy you are doing what your current job is, keep yourself busy. And what that means is find people to do streaming for, whether it's small organizations, nonprofits, other things that allow you to, keep on sharpening your sword, so to speak. But you gotta stay busy. You gotta stay, because that's also building your network. Now if you're doing stuff for a nonprofit, you got to treat it like you're getting paid $100 an hour. Like it is the same thing. You got to push hard. You got to push hard for the quality. You got to push hard for for your quality. You may not be able to get it everywhere across the board, but working with other people is going to get you out there. It's going to get you connected to other people. And it's also, you're going to learn a lot every single time you do it. And when you do it when things don't work perfectly, and you're volunteering your time and your hardware and everything else, you get a lot more room for error. Things aren't perfect, but they're better than they would have been if you weren't there. But you want to keep on pushing as hard as you can to help other people and be connected. But what you don't want to do is just sit in and try to send marketing out. I mean, for weeks, trying to hoping that you're going to get a job, because when that job shows up, you want to have already, be very comfortable with all that hardware and the process and everything else. And so, when we started, we did free streams all the time so that I could figure out how to make that actually work. In fact, I volunteered and flew out to volunteer on a free stream last week. So I still do that. And what it did is it allowed me to work on a lot of things that I don't normally do, put me under a lot of pressure that I'm not used to anymore. I used to put up everything myself, and now most of the time I just complain about the signal. And so working on the stuff I do with Michael Krasny, working on this show, working on volunteer shows that are a good cause. Last week's was for the victims of North Carolina, the hurricane in North Carolina. Not the victims of North Carolina. It's a great state. It's not causing any victims, but the hurricane in North Carolina. But it was a great way to. It was a great experience. Great people to work with. You got to meet a lot of new people. I got to meet Jeff Francis, who also volunteered on it, there's a lot of opportunity there. And so those are the kind of things you want to look for over and over and over again. I'm still doing it, and that's 20 years into it. So I get connected to your community. What you know and who you know are your assets. That's what and you just have to keep on building those assets every single day.
Yeah, and it's astonishing what you can get away with doing when you're not paying for it or not getting paid for it. This show is run on your questions, and the easiest way to contribute, if you've never done it before, is I'm getting it backwards. AskOfficeHours.global. If you see the QR code at the bottom of the screen, you can just go in there and just directly, immediately ask a question. Of course, questions that we get earlier in the show are probably going to have a much more in-depth answer, like the pearls of wisdom we just got. But if not, at very least, check out officehours.global, and there's a join us link, and that's another way to just get involved. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Alex in Montreal, Canada is asking, new subscriber. I came across an interesting live stream set up on Mark Bennett's YouTube channel where he uses the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II via USB-C and streams in 4K 30 frame rates per second, uses a dummy battery and Ecamm Live, 4K streaming, 3+ hours and no overheating.
CJ.
Hey, Alex, welcome. Thanks for the question. Definitely sounds like something that's doable. I've accomplished the same thing using the earlier version of that, the ZV-E10, but just the Mark I. And the ZV-E10 2 is supposed to have better thermal management. Things that they're probably doing to improve or lessen the chances of the thing overheating are, number one, that screen, the flip-out screen, is going to stay open. That's going to help keep whatever heat is getting generated by that LCD away from the body of the camera. High temperature mode is turned on so that way it's not going to automatically turn off. And then a big thing is there's not any sort of internal recording happening on the camera. So none of those buses and data moving around in the camera is generating any more heat than it needs to. So HDMI out or the USB out into some sort of capture.
Alex.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the environment. It depends on how hot it got. I think that if he's got a regular studio environment that's running at 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, or I think what would that be, about 16 to 18 Celsius, something in that range, it's probably going to be fine. And if you do all the things that CJ talked about, but if it gets warmer than that, we've had issues with the ZV-E10. I have less experience with the two.
David.
Just what I think is maybe a friendly correction. I don't think, and CJ, if you have this, please correct me. I don't think you can get 4K over USB. I believe you have to get 4K. You have to go out HDMI out into like a cam link or something like that. USB, I believe, limits you to 720. I could be wrong though. From the Mark II. I think it's
1080p. I do agree with you. I don't know if it's 4K out of the USB. I don't think it's 720p, but I don't think it's 4K either. But he may be streaming 4K, maybe just only taking USB out of it.
Right.
I think that the challenge oftentimes and I don't know Mark Bennett's show, so I don't know his. A lot of times, YouTubers will talk about things on their channel that are kind of half cooked, half baked. They don't have a lot of. This gets into that. A lot of times they're in their own silo and they're making stuff up without talking to a lot of other people about it. And again, I don't know Mark Bennett's. He may not be that way, but a lot of times they come up with some pretty imaginative solutions for things that may not be the best way to execute an event.
CJ.
The other thing that I would mention is that the when you go from a 4K to a 1080, it's not cropping in on the center of the sensor, so you're actually just running less processing through the camera. So you have to think about what your output is. So if you're not outputting into 4K and you're not streaming in, like if you're streaming at 1080, you're going to have diminishing returns to actually capture that signal in 4K. You might actually be putting additional processing and additional heat on the camera to get there. So make sure you think about your whole pipeline.
Alexander.
I just did a quick Google search, and some review on photographyblog.com says it'll, over USB-C, it claims that it'll do 1080p 60, but it also gives you a 4K 30 option.
Next question.
This one's from Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma. Are you disappointed with Apple for choosing to have a week of announcements instead of one big event?
CJ.
I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. It's definitely a departure or something a little different for them. But when you think about the event model, we've been kind of getting away from it since we started going to the videos. And as these videos get more and more dense with more and more products getting released, the chances that someone is going to sit through the video to wait for the thing that they're looking for, whether that's the MacBook Pro or the Mac Mini, that kind of goes down. They're probably going to wait till it comes out and scrub forward to what they want anyway. The iPhone is a different animal. The whole world is watching that event. It's a different class of event. But if you're interested in the Mac Mini, here's the Mac Mini video. If you're interested in the MacBook, here's the MacBook Pro video. And that'll probably help from a PR perspective. It'll probably help more individual articles get written about the individual products as opposed to here's a wrap-up of the Apple event.
David.
Just give me my Mac Mini. I don't care what they do. Just give me my Mac Mini. I think there are very few people in the world who decide what Mac to buy based on how Apple decides to announce it. I think they walk into the store or they go to Amazon, they find something that's in their price point, they decide does it need to be portable or not, and then they click purchase. For us, just give me my Mac Mini.
Alex?
I still think Apple could flex, and just go, hey, we're announcing something on next week and it's on sale right now. And it's like a black box. Like it costs this much money and you can be right in the front of the line. We're not giving you a discount. You can just be at the front of the line if you order now. And they'd sell millions without people even knowing what, like if they did that with the phone, I would just buy it a week early, like I would just like, yay, and so, I think, yeah, as far as the Mac Mini goes, just take my money. I mean, I'm just ready to, like, if it's anywhere near the rumors, it's going to be something that a lot of us are excited about. I'm looking at buying a lot of for a project.
You've been saying that for years, and every time you're even more right. It's so
it's
so
just
true.
So so we'll see. We'll see what comes out. I love the idea of them breaking this up. We have to remember. I was just having a conversation about conferences with somebody earlier this week, and we talked about why. We have to remember that we limit ourselves to a lot of things based on the past, and we have to at some point go, oh, right. That was a past conversation. That was a past, protocol. Like what we did, the construct that we built was based on limitations that no longer exist. And so we have to keep on always asking. Now, if you move too fast, people lose kind of track of what you're doing. But we have to think about that. Like for instance, conferences. Good example. Why do we have tracks? Tracks are the worst thing ever. Like the tracks in a conference should not exist. Like it is violence to the attendee because they have they want to see 6 things. They want to be part of those conversations, and they can't be part of 6 things or 3 things or 2 things because you made a bunch of tracks. Now, why did we do the tracks? The tracks are because this would be tracks, right? The tracks were because we didn't have Zoom. Like we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have ways to deliver the video. So we had to deliver them in person. And we all had to show up because we didn't have HD and we didn't have all these other things. And so there was, it was low resolution and little window, and it was expensive to get the hardware. And remember, the conferences that we have now are based on things that we learned how to do in the 80s and 90s, and so they haven't changed very much since then. And so we all had to get into a room and talk about it. But we don't need to do that anymore. we don't need to have a conference. The reason it's 1 or 2 days and everything's all in one place and we have to have a lot of tracks is because it costs money to fly there, and we don't need to do that anymore. And this really, I started thinking about this when I went to TED, and they just have one plenary. TED has one plenary. Everyone's in it. The short presentations, and then there's huge breaks, like an hour and a half between every little session, so that people can talk. But what they did is they created a context for conversation. So everyone sees the same thing, and then they go and have a conversation. But you can say, "Hey, did you see that last one?" Everybody has a thing to talk about because of that, which makes it the most powerful conference structure that I've seen in person. The thing is that as you break all of this stuff up, you can pay more attention to it. And I think that the idea of releasing these one day at a time, if it works, and I think it will, I think you're going to see Apple do this more and more. You're going to see less and less. We're going to do events where we're releasing 4 products, and they're going to start releasing. Now, they might have some fanfare around the very largest ones, the iPhone and other things like that. But a lot of them, I think you're going to see Apple do individual videos about those things. Now, what is happening behind the scenes is they're quietly meeting with all the social media folks. So the Justines and the Marquez Brownlee and all of those, they're meeting with them to give them Q&A and everything else that's there. But again, with Zoom, Apple, I don't know if Apple uses Zoom, but with online conferencing, and with the little offices that a lot of these companies have in big cities. They can kind of do all the things that they need to do to release it and get the information out without having to go through the expense and the trouble of doing one big one. And we don't have to watch through the whole thing. There's a lot of things I'm not interested in. And so the advantage of doing it as one big thing, by the way, is that they get to talk about things that we wouldn't listen to otherwise. Like when they release an iPhone, there's a whole bunch of stuff like the environmental studies and what they're doing with solar arrays and everything else. All things that if Apple released on its own, no one would watch. But they put it before they talk about the iPhone camera, and everybody watches. So there are reasons to package these things together. But if you're just releasing a bunch of new products, I think the videos make a ton of sense.
Courtney.
No, I won't be disappointed. The one
Courtney
thing
won't even be watching.
He's
going to wait for us
because there's not going to be any announcements. The one thing that is curious, that the link that Pedro put in this question is interesting, because what this guy has done is create a event video, since Apple didn't create one, where he kind of duplicates all of the setups that you'd normally see with close up of something, and great taglines like, "Now it's 20% better than the previous version." And there's this fake Craig Federini is great for introducing Apple Intelligence. So he has created those that miss the one big announcement, with all the generic taglines that now this is the best M4 ever. Because, hey, it's the first M4. So it's kind of funny to watch. But no, I won't miss it. And they normally do that, the big announcement, if they've got a new product to introduce rather than just a speed bump on everything, then they'll generate enough interest with the one long video introduction to actually break into the regular media announcements, like the ABC Evening News or CBS Evening News, where they'll make it into the non-tech news programs and get a mention in there that'll drive some interest to the announcement, rather than just a online news release that's on the website. Of course, the influencers will always be falling down all over themselves about how great the new things are.
Next question.
Tommy Johnson, St. Paul, Minnesota is asking, what are the issues to be concerned about when you run ATEMs into ATEMs? How does it work with BitFocus and Companion for switching on a Stream Deck?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, you'll get a little bit of latency, but the biggest one is if a show caller hits you with something that you need to do really fast, and you're sitting there having to sub-switch from one switcher into another one. An example might be if you have a sub-switcher that's just handling graphics, and you have 4 laptops all with different playouts and different PowerPoint, Keynote, whatever, and somebody calls it, and you have to run over there, hit that, instead of just having it all in one switcher. So that's an ordeal that can occur. The other thing is making sure that they're at the same frame rate, making sure that there's not additional processing going on there, because you're, again, introducing more lag. If you can, upgrade to a 2ME, or if you're in the extreme world, whatever that means to you, as far as if it's a monetary thing, you might need to rent something or go with another production company that has the tools that you need. As far as BitFocus Companion, these switchers are IP based. So on a companion page, you just basically are targeting those IP addresses with those switchers, with those buttons. So you're just saying, like, this ATEM on this page, and I would segment them by page if you can, because if you have like a 32 button and you have a cut and a cut on the same page, you better have them properly labeled, unless you're going to be sub-switching on the wrong switch. So there's some dangers there, and this is why having the bigger daddies of, the 4ME, the Constellation, that have as many IOs as you actually need for the show.
Alex.
I did build, this is a long time ago, but I did build an ATEM Mini 4ME, or really 3ME switcher, and it looked a lot like this. So this was, and so basically the bottom switchers went up into the top switcher. And so the key that I learned that you do have to do is you switch, just a couple frames, a couple milliseconds before, you have to switch so what I built was something that I could hit a button and it would just go to the right input in the right MEs, so you have a bunch of IO that was there. The problem was you just had to make sure that the supplying switcher switches before the main switcher, and you can't do them both at the same time. You'll see a glitch that happens there, and so you have to. It's about 15 milliseconds. It doesn't take very much to time that, and it'll be then look correct. I didn't use it for anything. Like, it was literally like a weekend project. I printed, I printed these. I just got my 3D printer, so I printed the thing that would hold them all and put them all in there and put it together and built a controller for it, and then said this was a crazy idea and I'm not going to use it. But you could build some pretty crazy. One of my bucket projects would be to take a bunch of the extreme STIs and put like 9 of them together, so you have 8 of them, and then you have big 8ME, and you might wonder why you would do that. We've done this for gaming. So with some of these, where we give every gamer that's playing in the venue its own switcher, because then we can sit there and individually work on things where they're only on a switcher, and we figure out their DBE or their ME, where it makes sense, and we have total control over each one of them. And so we found that to actually be less expensive than getting an 8ME switcher. It allowed us to have constant setup, so we had an assistant going in and fixing things or re-switching things as we needed it to. So, but we did those with 1ME switchers. We had a lot of them.
Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. Do you think the Vision OS platform has a future, despite the rumored end of production of the Vision Pro?
Alexander.
I think this is just a control of supply chain management, because they're not selling as many, and they probably didn't expect to sell as many because of the high price tag. I think it has a future. I think in its current iteration and form factor, it's just a stepping stone to the next thing. And I can't emphasize this enough. Apple has a lot of money. Think about what happened to the supposed Apple car project. They worked on that for years, spent gobs and gobs of money on that, and then one day they just decided to go, no, just throw it in the bin. So they're going to keep working on it, and the form factor is going to change, and the platform will get better, and people will develop more apps for it over time. But they had to have that minimum viable product, and they had to get it out there.
CJ.
As somebody who uses one, I think it's got a tremendous amount of potential, and developers just need to spend some time catching up to thinking a little differently about how they're building things. I hope Apple makes some more first-party apps that can really flex and show off what it can do. But, I mean, as far as early days, it's like nothing I've ever used. So I think it has a future just because it feels like the future.
Courtney.
I will have the opposing point of view. I don't think it will be a platform in the future. I think the fact that as far as augmented reality goes, or they term it, spatial computing, it's very limited. Augmented reality, as we know, augmented reality has had a product in the field for almost 10 years now, decade, with the HoloLens, which came out in 2015. Microsoft has had two versions, a third version that they decided to shelve. that they have not been able to promote, even though they've been promoting it for very vertical markets and use in the military, things like this. It does have a few very, very, very narrow application markets, but nothing for the general consumer that's out there. Most general consumer, it has a great wow factor. You put it on, wow, it looks great. I have never seen anything like this before. Do I need to see anything like this again? Probably not. Once the wow factor wears off, it's like 3D television. You know, when everyone said, "Oh wow, 3D television in my living room, that would be great," and you put it on and it's, wow, I watched this movie in 3D, and you know now everyone has to wear glasses that comes over to watch my TV if we're going to see anything in 3D, and the shine wears off of that pretty quickly. And when you realize, you know, those 3D glasses have been sitting in the drawer for 3 years and we haven't brought them out. And this is a very personal type of device. You know, only you can see what's on that screen. And, you know, can you do anything with this augmented reality that you can't do with a regular screen and without encumbering yourself by putting a battery-operated device, sticking it to your face and spending hours in it? I think the shine wears off pretty quickly. So I don't think they've found – the reason nobody's found a great application, a killer application to release for it, why the developers haven't come up with anything in the years since it's been announced and the years since HoloLens has been out, is because there aren't any. There's nothing that everyone needs to see in 3D or needs to have to see, like Alex's favorite application that lets you see a Formula One car in your living room. Yeah, it's got a great wow factory, but what are the personal applications of that? Why do you need to walk around the car to see the backside when you could just put it on your screen and move your mouse and swivel around that 3D image to the other side and zoom in on it? You don't need augmented reality to do that. It works just fine on a flat screen.
Alex.
I have this whole flock of crows that I'm planning I'm just, it's going to be hundreds of them by the time I get Courtney to eat them all.
You got them on the barbecue yet?
Yeah. They're going to barbecue and we'll put them on a spit for you. We won't make you eat them raw. I think that the thing is that this is the first version. What I love about what Apple did is most people go the other direction. They go from, we'll put out a low MVP and then we'll build up. But the problem is everyone then builds for something low, and so what Apple did is build high. This is as far as it can go with the technology that we have, high frame rate, high resolution, a lot of cameras. The next version, there'll probably be another version like that or even better, and another version that's a lot less expensive. They'll figure out how to save money on and so on and so forth. But you have to get it out there and you have to get people playing with it. You have to give them the OS to have them play with it. The version of what Apple is envisioning is probably 2028 to 2030. This is just so that people have something laying around that they can use the OS for. So the fact that they are not doing it, I don't think they ever expected to sell more than 300,000 or 400,000 of them. So there you go.
Next question.
This one's from Alex Lindsay. David, how did the first rundown go?
Yeah, David, tell us.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. I had a blast. I had amazingly brilliant people on the panel. We had 3 different topics we talked about, all through a philosophical lens. For this crew, probably the most interesting thing was sort of the way we did the show using Ecamm Live, a different platform that we haven't used before. I think there's a lot of possible growth and ways to make it better. But I had a blast. I learned so much from everyone. Thank you for asking, and for everyone who watched.
Yeah, and you can watch it it's on office hours on our website. We're going to, as we get more of them, we're going to give it its own shelf. But that'll be Thursdays at 6, right? Is that right, David? Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's a new show. Done. It is David is hosting and processing and using Ecamm for it. So this is yet another platform that we're doing. So you get to see another take on production from David. I'm really excited about it.
It's also worth mentioning that we finally have a shop, and you can order, at least for the next 30 days or so, office hours.
November 20th.
T-shirts. Is that our cutoff?
Yeah, that's the cutoff. So if you want a T-shirt, yeah.
T-shirts are $45, and that is, of course, 20 of which is just a donation. And then the remaining 25, I guess, goes to the T-shirt, and it is at officehours.global/shop. Coming up, of course, on Saturdays, the weekend Q&A. So join us in Mukana for a Q&A session where you can ask questions, vote, and watch the show. Sunday, of course, is Introspection, which is more philosophical. It's live only, and we don't broadcast it. It's not on YouTube, and it's a great way to get your feet wet. Of course, we're also working on labs, Opus Pro, Graphics Tuesday, and the volunteer meetup is Saturday, I believe, at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, Extra Hours is always going on anytime we're not on office hours. So that's pretty much the end of that.
Jason's still working on getting right to the 57. He was
Seconds.
right.